Hello and welcome. This is going to be another Divine Partnership Coaching video, and I think I'm going to include it in the When Karmics Attack series mainly, but I also just want to include it in general because it can come up between twins also. And what I briefly want to talk about is what to do when someone is accusing you of being controlling. And let's assume firstly that if you're getting that feedback that you're checking yourself. Am I being controlling? And really ask too, am I being unjustly controlling? And am I being controlling of others, or am I just being in control of myself? Because a lot of times somebody who's in karmic energy, whether it's twin flame or soulmate or anything, when they're in what I call the other dimension, for them, you having good boundaries and good self-control, or asking them to have good boundaries and self-control, comes across as controlling in a toxic way. And typically, it's not even, first of all, they typically don't even think about it. Like they don't really sit and analyze it and think about what they're saying. They usually just throw it out there, and in most cases it's a crazy making tactic, and it's an attempt to get you to, if you're a good person or you're somebody that values free will and being, I don't know, just being a partner or a friend or a family member who is not controlling, it's really easy to rile you up and get you triggered if they accuse you of being controlling. And this can happen in any sort of relationship, especially if you've been very codependent or not had very good boundaries or self-worth, because all it takes is to say you're being controlling and that'll spin you out. Because, if you worked really, really hard to, if you worked really hard to make sure that what you're asking for was not overreaching, if and this can happen a fair amount even in co-parenting relationships too. If you're standing up for your kids' emotions and feelings and asking for things to slow down, or you're asking for some things to speed up, or you're saying, no, this behavior is not appropriate, I'm going to have a boundary here until you're ready to, address that and be accountable for it. It's easy for somebody in the other dimension to throw you out into the other dimension by simply saying, no, that's controlling. So here's the deal. When somebody is accusing you of being controlling, step one, do check yourself. Don't and it takes some work. It's easier said than done. I'm talking about this after, dealing with this from a lot of sources, a lot of karmic people, right? Even my DM. It takes a little while to get to the point where you are not so bothered by it. But one of the first things is to recognize how to get to the point of not being bothered by it. And really, that's when it does come down to self-worth, which is a lot of what especially the twin flame journey is about, but life in general is about, like, getting to that place to where you're self-referencing, which means that, like, you can get feedback from the outside world, you can take it in, you can say, does this match with my inner being? Does this match with where I'm going and what I want to do? And does this match with how I feel about myself? Now, here's the funny thing. Typically, when somebody accuses us of being controlling or domineering or whatever things along those lines, the funny thing is that you immediately feel bad about it, but we often associate that bad feeling with meaning that we're actually doing it, when really, actually, that's our emotional GPS system saying, that's not accurate. Like, when you feel bad when someone is saying, like, you're doing this thing, it typically, like, I won't say it means that you're not doing it, but if you can look at, okay, how am I acting? What is the feedback I'm getting? And if you've got, like, only one or two people around you that are accusing you of being in a way that seems contrary to how you're being, look at the feedback. If you've got 10 people telling you that you're acting controlling, look at it. You probably are. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but look at it. Are you being controlling? But if you have 10 people telling you, no, you're being fair, and you've done a lot, you've done your work, and what you're asking for is really not that big a deal. They're just taking it out of context, and you have two people that are just louder than everybody else and saying that they feel like you're being controlling. It's much less likely that you are. So that feeling that you get, you can self-reference and go, oh yeah, nah, that's them. And in most cases, the another good thing to recognize is, especially if this is well, I mean, either way, if it's a karmic for you or your twin flame, is recognize they're often mirroring the karmic people around them, or they're repeating cycles from their childhood and how they got treated. So 9 times out of 10, it's often a projection. Like, they are worried, like they are being controlling, and they don't want, they feel like if they allow you to have this conversation, if they allow you to say, hey, you gotta make an adjustment here because this is going on with you, or I'm gonna have a boundary and pull back, and I'm not gonna play with you if you're gonna be mean. For them to say, okay, I understand, I do get that, and that's fair. That would be, they fear, whether subconsciously or consciously, that they're going to lose some amount of power, which is actually really silly. Like, it's actually much more powerful to be the kind of person who can say, okay, I own that. That was me. That's inappropriate. I recognize that I didn't feel good having that experience as a kid, and I'm repeating that same thing. I'm not going to do that to my kids. Or I recognize that when I separated from so-and-so and then saw them out doing a ton of stuff with so-and-so, that I didn't like it. It felt really, really crappy, and it would have been nice if they would have been more mature and thoughtful about me, even though they didn't have to be. And so I'm going to choose to be that way myself because I want to be the way that I wish I was treated. Or, if it's coworkers and stuff, and like, say coworkers are being really cutthroat, and you could say, well, I would rather own, okay, I've been taking on a lot myself, and I've been trying to hoard a lot of the money. I don't want to be that kind of person. I'm going to go ahead and share, even if other people are being that way. Like, it's actually a lot stronger to be that way. People respect you more. You tend to keep friends around. You raise your vibration, so you don't even attract, like, you repel people who are in the other dimension when you do that. And oh, it's funny, I just saw a car with a star on it and a number 2, which fits in with some patterns of things that I've been seeing a lot lately. Anyways, it's a lot more powerful to be the kind of person who has enough self-control to be able to take in contrasting opinions and feedback and things like that, which I think is often actually why we get so bothered when somebody accuses us of being controlling, because we want to feel like we are able to take in that feedback and check ourselves and do that. But usually, if we're accusing somebody of being controlling, we're actually like the squeaky wheel. We are being extra controlling, and so we're constantly like hyper vigilant to look for how are others trying to control us, which is one of the ways you can actually learn to I'm going to say alchemically neutralize such a trigger as being accused as that, whether it's a karmic or your twin flame, is to recognize that if they are accusing you of being controlling, one, spirit is simply pointing out for you, hey, you still have a trigger here. If you've worked on your self-worth, you've got plenty of feedback saying that you're not being, and you're still bothered by it, or it causes you to perpetuate an argument or something with these people, then that's for you to heal. Pull back, heal that. You don't need to take action, especially if you're a divine feminine that's been working on releasing like toxic masculinity traits, because that's typically a toxic masculinity thing. But recognize, though, that person feels very out of control and they feel very powerless. And the irony is, if somebody is accusing you of being controlling when you know that you are asking very little, or even if what you're asking for is big, that it's reasonable, it's actually that person gives you a lot of power in their mind and heart, and they're afraid that if they give you any more, that they won't have control over themselves. And if you're watching this video, you already wouldn't be likely to abuse that power in the first place. But that's what they're worried about, and it's very likely that they have many people around them that are being that way, and it shows that they are doing their shadow work in that. So the best thing you can do when somebody, when a karmic attacks, or when karmic energy attacks, even if it's coming from your twin flame, is just, stop and learn to be self-referencing. Does this feel right? Am I really doing this? And if your answer is no, as it will likely be, then let it go. It doesn't really matter. It's not actually even about you. It's actually kind of a compliment that they think that you have that much control, and that there's potential that you might you might, if you decided to misuse it, that it could turn their lives upside down. And it shows that they're doing their shadow work, which is what you want to see anyways. So get back to that self-referencing point. Get back to your intuition. And if your intuition says, there's a lot more going on with this than just this accusation, or if there's a particular topic you keep trying to touch on that really, if it was anybody else, it'd be an easy conversation to have, and you can try even having the conversation with other people. Test it out. If this is an easy, I just saw 11:11 on the timer, if this is an easy conversation to have with anybody except the person in karmic energy who's telling you that you're being controlling, then it's actually that issue is just very sensitive for them at the moment. And usually your response is actually supported by spirit, whatever that response is. And early on, that might be to argue with them about it. It might be to respond in kind and call them controlling, all that stuff. But your goal is to get to healing that, healing the need to defend yourself when there's nothing to defend, healing the feeling that they must be right if they're continuing to do this, because no, that's not true. And really learning to just look at yourself and say, does that feel like me? No, it doesn't feel like me, so I'm not going to take on that mantle. And I know that I am consistently working on my healing and learning about having healthy boundaries and things like that, and I'm learning to recognize the tactics that can be used to break a healthy boundary, including being called controlling. And then just think about it and go, you know what, that's probably happening with them. And that's where you can get back to #ThankYouKarmics, right? Especially if this is a twin flame in karmic energy, is that if they have somebody around them that's accusing them of being controlling anytime they try to have a healthy boundary, then it's, spirit is working on that with them. And working on it with you too. So you're reflecting each other in that. Just have faith that it's going to work out, and let it go. Learn to find ways to let that go. And as you get better and better at that, the argument actually loses its value. If you're not triggered by it, and you don't change your healthy boundaries because of it, they're going to try something else. And the cool thing is, then you get to work on removing that trigger, and the more that you remove those triggers and the less you are able to be triggered, the harder it is to manipulate you, and the better your self-worth gets, and your ability to self-reference gets. And then you start to really see, who is karmic and who is twin flame and karmic energy, and you get to stand more in your power, which just is very attractive on top of everything else. And you don't get knocked off your track, whatever way you're going while you're glowing up. You don't get knocked off of it so easily, and that actually starts to diminish if you've been with your twin flame for a while, or if you've been with your karmic for a while. It starts to really diminish the value of those interactions, and it levels up the more positive interactions. So, as I say in most of my videos, when you feel triggered, that's for you to work on, even if it was justified what you said or did, even if they deserved whatever thing came from their behavior. When triggers get brought up, it's not necessarily that you need to take action to do something towards someone else or make them do anything. It's simply for you to get better at releasing control, and then recognizing when you're no longer fighting for control, when you're no longer in it, which, I'll have to do another video on it, but it's kind of ironic at that point, because then people start to get weirded out by the fact that you don't need control and that you're not seeking control, and you might actually see an increase in people accusing you of trying to take control or wanting to take control. And it's really kind of cool to see them try to work that out in their minds and try to test that out, especially because a lot of people in this world, you know, they might say they don't want control, but they really do, and they will struggle for the power play and all that stuff. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and end this video here. I hope you enjoyed it. I appreciate your likes, shares, and comments, and I'll see you in the next video.